Hey everyone, Mo here, and before the video begins, I just want to let you guys know that my schedule has opened up for me to do coaching again. So if you're interested in private one-on-one coaching for me to help you, whether you're a newer player and you want to excel at the game very quickly and learn the fundamentals without developing any bad habits early, or if you're an experienced player who's already maybe platinum or diamond in your top 1%, but you need some help filling in the gap to get you to that 0.01%, to make you just some of the best, then hit me up on Discord and I can get you in some private one-on-one coaching lessons to help you polish up any skills you want to refine and help you learn all of the secrets to becoming a top player. That's it. I hope you enjoy the video. Hey everyone, Mo here, and welcome to another Meta Monday. So, this is going to be for November 8th, I think? November 8th through the 14th, so, yeah, let's see what changed. So far, number one deck is still the same, but a lot has changed from the 2nd through 8th spot, so can't wait to get into that. It looks like the meta is actually shifting around now. It's not just the same aggro decks or aggro meta. It seems that a lot of people are finally starting to attempt to counter the aggro decks, which is making the meta less aggro, obviously. And we're getting more into the mid-range style meta now that a lot of people predicted, and that I myself thought we were going to go into, is that people were going to start countering these aggro decks with these more mid-range style decks like Sejuani Gangplank, stuff like that. So we're seeing some insane win rates, some insane play rates out of a lot of these decks, and I can't wait to get into the meta Monday. So before we get into the meta Monday and talk about all of these decks, I wanted to remind you guys that 60% of the people that watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to me. So if you guys could do me a huge favor and click the subscribe button and turn notifications on and leave a comment, that'd help me out a lot with the YouTube algorithm. I'm trying to hit 5,000 subscribers before the end of this year so we can start 2022 off extremely strong and powerful. So if you guys could do me a favor, do that, hit me up, help me out with the algorithm, I'd really appreciate it. But that's it for the intro. Let's get into this meta Monday. So, number one, the most played deck in the meta is Draven Sion. Woo! Yay, Draven Sion. Yeah, I mean, not much to talk about. I'm not going to stick on Draven Sion too much. It's been number one for, I think, like 7 weeks in a row now, so not much to say about it other than, yeah, that's still being said. It's not being hard countered by anything in the meta. Sejuani Gangplank, I think, is pretty decent into it. I don't think it's necessarily great, but I definitely think it's okay into it. But yeah, Draven Sion, number one, nothing changed. Number two, Sejuani Gangplank came out of almost nowhere, basically nowhere. Number two play rate with almost 8% and a 59% win rate. That's the thing that gets me. This deck, this tier 2 deck, or tier 1.5, very good tier 2 deck, not, you know, it's supposed to sound bad at all, but this deck was not this good last week, or the week before that, or the week before that. But out of nowhere, this deck kind of just popped up and has a 60% win rate now. That's absolutely nuts. But to be fair, it's pretty good into the field. Again, it's not bad into Draven Sion. You know, it can go either way depending on draws. But it's good into Zed Poppy. It's good into Lurk. It's good into... Actually, I don't think it's good into Ziggs Poppy. It's good into Darkness. It's good into Pink City. Like, it's good into all of these decks because this... it goes aggressive when it needs to with all of its low to the ground units. It has insane end game finishers if you can't deal with the leveled up Gangplank, the leveled up Sejuani, and the Dreadway. But then it also has a lot of good game. It beats every other mid-range deck because it does have that leveled up Sejuani. If you play Sejuani leveled, your opponent can't ever really attack into you. They can't threaten a single combat or a concerted strike because you can just frostbite their entire board. They can't block you. They can't attack you. So you kind of just lock the game up once you get leveled Sejuani and like an elusive or the crack shot or anything like that that deals damage before your attacks actually go off. It becomes really easy for you to close out games and steal wins away from other mid-range decks with GP Sejuani. So I am a little surprised that it popped up to number two. Not like the most surprised. Like if you told me last week, oh, Sejuani Gangplank is going to be the second most played deck in the meta, I'd say, okay, I understand. If you told me that it was going to have a 59% win rate, I would have told you there is no way. Yeah, for this deck to be that played and have a 59% win rate is kind of fucking bonkers. So that's really, really cool to see that more decks in the meta is still evolving. It's not just, oh, these 3 decks are here to stay. The meta is still evolving all around. There's not necessarily new decks showing up, but older decks or already established decks are finding their spotlight now in the meta, or finding ways to leave the meta and stuff of that nature. So it's really, really, really cool to see. And this makes me super excited, and it makes me, I haven't been this excited to play LoR in a very long time, because this is one of the first metas in a very, 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 very long time where not only do you have like legitimately 8 or 9 viable tier 1 decks, or decks that can be really good on ladder, but that's always changing from week to week. We're actually seeing a change, with the exception of Sion Draven being number 1 for I think like 7 or 8 weeks in a row now. The number 2 through 8 decks, their slots have been changing around constantly, which is extremely fun as a player. It's extremely fun as a competitive player. The tournament scene right now is insane. I was talking with someone off stream yesterday, and we sat there and we counted 9 different decks that were insane on ladder, and that's a lot. Like, having 9 good ladder decks is a lot. So that's a lot more than we had last set, where it was Sion Draven, Nami Zoe, and that was basically it. Like, you could cheese some games in there with, you know, Ping City if you wanted to, but most part you only had 2 decks. Meta before that, we had exactly Sivir Auction. The meta before that, we had like exactly 1 other deck. So we just had, like, we've been in these 1 and 2 deck metas for a very long time. So having a meta where you have 9 meta decks, like really good ladder decks, is extremely refreshing and really, really good. So if there is any time to play LoR again and pick it back up, it's this patch for sure, 100%. So with the addition of Jace coming in, I think in 2 days, I believe Jace comes out. Yeah, it's going to be really, really, really exciting. So number 3. We have Zed Poppy. So this is one of my favorite decks in the entire game at the moment, Zed Poppy Elusives. Not really too much to say on this deck. It's just, again, very solid rally deck. Elusives are hard to deal with. Rally is hard to deal with. Your really cheap save spells beats a lot of the really bad removal spells. So all of that put together in one deck, you have, on top of with the best champion in the game, you have, you know, one of the top tier decks. So not surprised. It is getting hated out a lot more. For instance, we see number 4 coming up here is going to be Swain Teemo. Swain Teemo is, you know, a hard counter to Zed Poppy. Draven Sion is a hard counter to Zed Poppy. Sejuani Gangplank is pretty good into Zed Poppy. If GP Sedge has leveled Sejuani on 6, they win the game. If they don't have leveled Sejuani on 6, Zed Poppy wins the game. And that's essentially how the matchup goes. So, with that being said, a lot of stuff is trying to counter the Zed Poppy deck extremely hard. So, the fact that it still has a 66 or so win rate is still pretty impressive with the play rate, win rate, and how much it's being targeted. I'd say that's really, really impressive. Number 4, a new kid on the block. We have Swain Teemo. And this is another thing. We have these decks getting invented. Like, week to week, we have new decks getting invented. Last week, it was, like, Teemo Sejuani, I think, was on the top 8. This week, we have Swain Teemo in the top 8. Like, this is basically, if you guys remember the old PNZ Noxus-style decks where they're like, oh, I'm going to remove your stuff, I'm going to Scorched Earth you, I'm going to close games out with, like, Leviathan Swain. That's basically what this deck is. This deck is old PNZ Noxus, but with more value. It's a lot of, like, Concologist gives you value, Telescope gives you value, Aloof Travelers gives you value, Hidden Pathways gives you pretty decent draw spells, Lecturing Yordle, insane removal spells. Everything else in here is just good removal spells. You use mushrooms and all these little pings to level up your Swain pretty quickly, and you'll eventually close the game out with a Leviathan and a Swain, if you don't just close the game out with having very good, very solid tempo with things like Lecturing Yordle, Poison Dart removal spells, and your elusive aggro. So yeah, deck is extremely, extremely cool. I'll have a video out on this deck later this week. So if you want to see how I play the deck, you want to see my thought process behind the deck, stuff of that nature, I believe it's coming out Wednesday, if not Thursday. So make sure to stick around the channel, leave a sub on the channel so that way you can see that. Next, going into number 5 is Lurk, and here these last 4 are decks that we've definitely seen before. They've dropped in play rate. Like I said, the play rate is always mixing around from week to week, but we've definitely seen all 4 of these decks before. Lurk, getting lower in win rate, lower in play rate. This was expected. I called this last week. Sejuani Gangplank being a humongous counter to it and being the second most played deck definitely made Lurk leave out the meta. The problem with Lurk is it's a very polarizing deck, meaning it loses really hard the same way it wins really, really hard. It loses really, really hard. So if you play a deck that counters Lurk, like Sejuani Gangplank, like Teemo Swain, then Lurk will not win. It literally cannot win. Sejuani Gangplank gets too good, it's too aggressive, and then Sejuani level up just completely annihilates it. Swain Teemo is one of the decks that has a gajillion and 1 removal spells, so all of your 2 and 1 HP early game units will not get to attack. You will not get to trigger Lurk. And then your larger units later on down the line will just get killed by things like Scorched Earth and Guillotine via the Swain Teemo. On top of, if they ever actually level Swain, then you will just never get to attack. So, yeah, Lurk is one of the decks that's extremely easy to hate. So when it did start getting popular and did start winning, I told you guys that's a nice pump and dump on some LP. You want to get all your Lurk LP in quickly before people start countering it. Now's the time to dump your Lurk deck in the trash because people are starting to counter it and it's not very good. I would not be surprised if Lurk either completely dropped out of the top 8 play rate for next week or at the very least dropped down to either the 7th or the 8th spot. So yeah, not very popular, not very good. Ziggs Poppy Burn, another deck that got not very popular. Not quite sure why. Ziggs Poppy Burn is still really solid. It loses to Draven Sion, but I mean, it beats GP Sejuani. It can raise Zed Poppy. It's kind of just like, do you have more units or do they have more rally style of deal? You beat Swain Teemo because you're Burn and you're not really a unit-based deck. Lurk is, again, another really close deck. It's just who can get more aggressive, who has the attack token on odds, basically. But yeah, that's really close. You beat Darkness, you beat Pink City, so I'm not really sure why this is such low on play rate, and the win rate's at about 54.5%, which is still pretty good. But one of the lower ones on this top 8 list, that's very confusing me. I always thought this deck was pretty good. This is the deck I used to get to Diamond 1. I'm currently sitting in Diamond 1. I'll be streaming again tonight, trying to hit Masters, and I'll tell you guys what deck I'm going to use to hit Masters here in a bit. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I've had a lot of success with this deck, so we'll see. Maybe people are just falling out of the aggro. People are getting tired of playing aggro, and they want to try these new things like mid-range and Swain Teemo. Number 7 is Darkness. Darkness is basically here to try and beat Draven Sion. Other than that, I'm not really sure. It beats not Lurk. It beats not really Poppy Zed. I'm not really sure why Darkness is being played, other than the fact that people just strictly enjoy it. I don't think Darkness is a very good deck. I haven't thought Darkness was a good deck for a very long time now. The win rate isn't extremely impressive to me. It's one of those decks where if you're a good player playing against a bad player on Darkness, you will probably win. But as soon as you play against a good player as the Darkness player, you're going to have an extremely hard time winning. Darkness is, by design, a tempo negative deck, so you're playing at a disadvantage for the entire game. It's definitely like a pub stopper type of deck where you're just wanting to beat players that are playing incorrectly, but I don't really think Darkness is going to do well at the top of ladder. I'm really surprised it's still hanging on in top 8 play rate, other than the fact that, again, it's just really popular because people like control decks. This is a good control deck. Where people think it's a good controlled deck. It's one of the easiest decks to build, stuff like that. And these pre-built decks always do really well. So, yeah, I guess, or do well as far as play rate goes. So that's the only reason I can imagine this thing is in 7. And at number 8, we have Pink City. Deck is still extremely solid. I think Pink City is one of the better tournament decks. It's one of the best ways to use TF. You kind of have to decide if you're going to play Sejuani Gangplank or TF Gangplank is the only difference. Both Pink City and Plunder play about the same. So it just really comes down to, do you want to play your Twisted Fate Gangplank with more burn, or do you want to play the Sejuani Gangplank with the more better top end where you have better top deck wars, so you can draw into things like the Dreadways, draw into your big champions that are going to win you the game later on. Whereas with Pink City, you're more likely to draw into like a 1-drop or a Make It Rain or some type of thing that just does 1 damage in the late game. So that's the main difference between the two. Pink City, still extremely solid. Yeah, so that's it for the top 8. Now it's time for me to give you my wild card for the week. And my wild card is actually, and I can't believe I'm saying this, it's going to be Thralls. So I think Thralls is, I know a lot of people wanted me to show my deck list and go over the deck a little bit more. But yeah, let me do this. Let me pull it up right here for you. So basically, Thralls has extremely good matchup spread across the tables right now. It's good into, out of these top 8s, it's good into Draven Sion, good into GP Sejuani, pretty bad into Zed Poppy, but you're good into Teemo Swain, you're good into Darkness, you're good into Pink City. Lurk is going to be kind of frustrating, but good news, Lurk is on the downfall. Poppy Ziggs is going to be more difficult, but it's on the downfall. Zed Poppy is going to be more difficult, but is up there. So out of this top 8, you're favored into 5 of them. And then out of the 3 that you're not favored into, 2 of them are extremely low on play rate, or getting lower on play rate by the week. Zed Poppy is not really going anywhere, but you kind of just get bodied by that deck. But Lurk, you lose to, but it's on the low end, and then Burn, you lose to, but it's on the low end again. Outside of that, you beat a good bunch of the other mid-range decks that you see in a lot of a lot of the bigger decks, because they can't really deal with all of your Frostbites, your board wipes. You can deal with a bunch of the swarm style decks like the Bandle Trees and stuff of that nature, because what they try to do is they try to swarm the deck, or swarm the board with 2/2s and 2/1s and stuff like that, like smaller units. And then you're playing 6 copies of Avalanche and Blighted Ravine, and and this version that I'm going to share with you guys plays Ice Shards and stuff of that nature too. So it really is hard for your opponent to establish some type of early swarm against you with your Clockwork Curators, your Kindly Tavern Keepers, all your board wipes, stuff like that. So you have the early game on lock. You play Succumb to the Cold, so that way you can Frostbite the big Scions and your big like Gangplanks and stuff of that nature, and then you eventually just combo them out, because this is a very combo heavy version that's playing things like Imagine Possibilities. So you should be able to combo out multiple Thralls by those turns 4, 5, and 6. You should be able to have an insane board full of 8/8s, and that should be able to apply more pressure, or should be able to apply pressure quicker than your opponent can play things like the Sion and get to their late game and things like that. So I'm also going to have a video on Thralls this week, so if you want to see how I pilot Thralls, this is actually going to be the deck I'm playing tonight on my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/emotional, to try and hit Masters with Thralls. And I will have a video out on Thralls this week later as well, so it'll be the day after the Swain Teemo video. So again, make sure to subscribe, so that way you can get notification on that. And that is going to wrap up our Meta Monday for this week. Pretty interesting stuff. Again, I really, really enjoyed this meta. I think this meta in this patch is really, really cool. The fact that we have the top 8 is changing weekly as far as positions, and as far as new decks showing up, being built, like Teemo Swain, and then older decks showing back up, like Plunder. So extremely cool, extremely fun stuff. This is the time to be playing LoR. I hope you guys are enjoying this meta as much as I am. Let me know in the comments down below what deck you guys think is going to completely fall out of top 8, or what deck do you think is going to move down the most out of this. For me personally, I think Lurk, again, is either going to drop out of top 8 completely, or be moved all the way down to like the 8th spot, like barely hanging on there. I think it'll barely be hanging on by like 0.1%. So that's what I think. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below. That's going to be it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.